Justin Janowski. I'm your host. I'm also the founder of Faith to Influence. I started my business in December of 2019, December of 2018, just before 2019. And in that first year in business, I collected over $250,000 in revenue. I didn't think that was going to happen when I started, though. I was just hoping to earn 60 grand. I was hoping just to make it and provide for my family, but God did way more than I ever imagined. And I learned a few things, and I probably had developed a few skill sets going into that launch of my business that were critically important. And that's what I share with you in this podcast. We're here to help you with sales strategies, with designing and pricing your offers, and with the mindset that you need around sales and money to have success in growing your income and your impact. So, listen in. Today is the episode about building rapport or getting into rapport in the sales process with your prospects. Rapport is really trust, connection, relationship. It's being on the same page with somebody. You know, you're in rapport with somebody in sales or in business or in life or in relationships when you're just vibing, when it just feels natural, it feels comfortable, it feels good. You're on the same page. Rapport feels like a lack of resistance in the conversation. When you're out of rapport, you feel that resistance or distance, or that you're just out of sync with one another. There's a lack of trust. Maybe there's a skepticism or a hesitancy on one side or the other when you're out of rapport. But being in rapport feels really natural and really good in the sales conversation. So this is important. To us, it's the second step in our 10-step sales conversation. And it's the first step that actually happens after you begin a sales call. And what I want you to notice is in rapport, we can actually go through the step of the sales process really quickly, but it's something that we're doing throughout the entire 10-step process. The whole sales conversation is about being connected to the other person, being in sync, having a trusting relationship that's developing and growing from start to finish. So rapport is something that's happening and that we should be thinking about and focusing on, that connectivity between us and our prospects all the time during the conversation. But as far as a sales step, it's relatively brief on its own. To me, rapport is the first 30, 60, or 90 seconds of the sales conversation. And it's usually small talk. It's questioning, how are you doing? Where are you from? Or how's your day been so far? Very simple things like that to get started. A mistake that some salespeople make is they spend too much time in rapport, too much time trying to build a relationship, and it makes it seem like they're trying to be friends, or it makes it seem like they've got a different motive than what they have in the sales call. And it also can be a form of sales avoidance to avoid beginning the conversation. So if you're having rapport be and small talk be 5, 10, 15 minutes of the sales conversation, it can set the wrong expectation. It can communicate that you're lacking confidence. It can communicate that you're not the expert or your time isn't worth that much. Or it can make the other person feel like you're trying to just build a friendship, which makes the sales aspects of the conversation feel a little bit more awkward later. And so, as a professional, I want you to imagine like that your sales conversation is just like a coaching call. And if your sales conversation is just like a coaching call, it's worth a lot. A coaching call with me is worth $1,000. I'm not going to spend a significant amount of time in rapport building on a sales conversation when I know that there's a coach on the other end of the call who I can really help. That this call can be worth a lot to. I believe that a sales call or a coaching call with me can change the trajectory of somebody's business, which can change the trajectory of their life. So I'm not going to waste time. And you should operate that way too. If you're a marriage coach and you can impact this person's marriage through the sales conversation or coaching conversation, don't waste 15 minutes talking about the weather or the picture on the wall. Let's get to the good stuff, because this is a meaningful conversation and you'll build your relationship through the course of the conversation based on the nature of the questions that you ask, the way that you show up for the other side, the way that you coach them and lead them. So we don't need too much time here. Same thing if you're a health coach. This is important. If you're a business or a marketing coach, this is important. If you help people with their purpose or you're some sort of life coach, this is so important. The work you do is meaningful and we shouldn't delay getting to it. So for me, it really is usually like, hey, how are you? How's your day been so far? They'll ask me a return question and I'm going to answer. And then I'm going to move into my pre frame, which to me is the most important step of the sales process. We have a previous podcast episode on pre-frames. You can go back to the most important step of the sales process and find that there. But we want to, in that step, set the structure for the call, get consent to sell, and really show our leadership, our professionalism, our capacity to coach and provide for the person that we're with. So prior to the pre-frame, this rapport building step, pretty brief. But what I'm trying to pay attention to in a minute of small talk is, how does this person communicate? How they communicate, and communicating like them and in a way that they can receive, is going to increase my connectivity to that person. It's going to build trust, and it's going to make it easy for them to receive me. Remember that you might redefine sales as nothing more or less than trying to make it as easy as possible for the right person to say yes. And so for me to create an environment and a conversation that makes it easy for the right person to say yes and join my program, receive my support, receive my help, I need to be able to speak in a language that they can receive. And that's not just the words that I use. That matters too. You might pay attention to the types of words and the way the person communicates with you in the opening of the call, and match their communication in language for sure. If you're talking to somebody, if you're like a highly intellectual person and you're talking to somebody who's highly intellectual in the same topic that you are, and they're using like very advanced terms, and you know those same terms, then you should use the advanced terms too, and you should speak to them at that level. However, if you know really highly intellectual advanced terms in the area of your expertise, and you're on a call with somebody who doesn't know those terms, bring it down to common knowledge language that's going to connect, that's going to have you on the same page. But I'm also talking about looking beyond the words and how people communicate, and paying attention to their pace of communication. Some people communicate faster. Maybe they're in a rush. Maybe they're somebody who's really direct. Maybe they value time. Maybe that's just culturally how people talk where they live. They're just a little bit faster. Other people slow down. Culturally, that's how it is where they live. I've got some clients in LA or New York who want to get to the point, who are fast, who are direct. So I'm going to pay attention to the directness of their communication, and I'm going to be a little bit more direct as well. I've also got clients who live in places where people take their time more. I think of Albert Pellichet. You've probably heard me use him as this example if you've listened to my content before, because he's one of my favorite clients that I've worked with. I love Albert. Albert's in Louisiana, and culturally where Albert lives, people tell a lot of stories. They take their time. They're not in a rush. Whenever I talk to Albert, he tells me 2 or 3 exceptional stories. He gets me laughing and having a fun time. And that's his way of communicating. So when I'm with Albert, I'm not going to be as direct and to the point as I might be with other clients like Tommy Breedlove, who's a really direct, high powered leader. He's going to get to the point. I'm going to get to the point with Tommy. It doesn't mean we're not going to joke around. Doesn't mean we're not going to be in rapport. In fact, we'll be in rapport because we're direct with each other and transparent. But with Albert, I'm going to tell an extra story or two. I'm going to be a little bit more charming. I'm going to be a little bit more funny. I'm going to bring that part of my personality out. And I've got a lot of range in my personality. I have the capacity to be direct. I have the capacity to be funny and to take my time and slow down. And if you think about it, you probably do too. I've also got a lot of range in my voice, in the volume that I use. If I'm talking to somebody who speaks louder, I'm going to bring a little bit more volume and energy to my voice. If I'm talking to somebody who speaks a little softer, quieter, they're more thoughtful and deliberate in what they share, I'm probably going to be a little bit softer, a little bit quieter, a little bit more deliberate and thoughtful about what I share. If I'm talking to somebody who's very analytical, I'm probably going to speak with more facts and analytics and numbers, and speak to that part of their brain that needs to be stimulated for them to feel ready to understand the opportunity and make a decision. If I'm speaking to someone who's more emotionally based and talking about how they feel all the time, I'm going to ask, how do you feel kind of questions. How do you feel about that? How does that make you feel? Tell me more about that. And I'm going to really get into the emotion of it with them. And I'm going to communicate in a way that like communicates my emotion. That made me feel this. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. When you share that, it made me feel this. These are things that you're probably already doing naturally. I just want to invite you to consider that you've got a range in your volume, you've got a range in your pace of communication, you've got a range in how direct you are versus how social you are. And and you've got a lot of range in like the language you can use, the words you can use to communicate your point, and you want to speak to your audience and connect with your audience. This is not something that you need to think about consciously on a sales call. Thinking about this outside of a sales call in this moment while you're listening to the podcast and just setting an intention that you want to communicate a little bit more in your authentic version of the voice of your prospect is enough. Then when you're on the call, don't worry about it. Just be natural, just be yourself, and you'll probably find yourself fitting in a little bit more, connecting a little bit more. And so that's the balance we're striking here. Is you absolutely need to be authentically you. I'm not trying to call you to be somebody else or to support the value system of somebody that's outside of your values or like make up a southern accent or something crazy like that. We're not going that far. We want to be authentically ourselves to attract our ideal clients. And inside of my authentic leadership voice, I've got a lot of range, and so do you. So authentically find the language, the communication style that can make the other person you're with feel comfortable, feel safe, trust you a little bit more, and feel ready to make the right decision for themselves. We're not trying to manipulate or trick or anything like that. We're just trying to create an environment that makes it safe for the other person to share openly, to talk about the real challenges and problems they're facing, to commit to solving those problems in vulnerability and courage. And then if we've got an offer that can help them solve that problem and it's a fit, we want to make sure that they feel comfortable and safe enough to say yes and make that choice, make that investment, and take that massive action with us. This is important leadership. This is called being in rapport. And it's about building trust, communicating a language that people can receive so it's easy for the right people to say yes. It's the second step of our 10-step sales process. And it's something that we should be thinking about and working on all the time in how we communicate. Our tone matters, our voice matters, and we can use it probably more masterfully than we've done so far if we begin to gain awareness and work on it. If you would like to have a copy of all 10 of our steps in the sales process laid out in very clear form, we've got a written PDF digitally that we'll share with you for free. And you can find that at www.goodsalespdf.com. That's goodsalespdf.com. You can download a free copy of our 10-step sales process, including today's step, which was rapport. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. I'll talk to you all soon. God bless you.